Today we're going to actually talk about the 5 top nutrition tips I have for women with PCOS. And, just to break the ice here, my advice is counterintuitive. I would say that probably a lot of it is socially unacceptable because I look at food through the lens and through the context of just our biology and physiology. So how are our cells interacting with food? Because at the end of the day, food is simply information. It tells our body things. It tells our body to either do things or stop doing things. And then the cells are the ones that are creating these chemical messengers called hormones. And so it's really the cells are just communicating with each other. And so we need to translate certain things using our food. And it's as simple as that. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I am so excited that you're here. For those of you who don't know who I am, my name is Jessica Ash, and I'm a functional and clinical nutritionist who specializes in hormones and PCOS with the overarching theme of metabolism. Yes, you heard that right. I talk to you about cellular metabolism and the female biology because I personally nerd out on it, but I also like educating about it in a way that helps you understand your body on a deeper level so you can just make empowered decisions about your fueling and your health based on deeper knowledge. I think that the alternative health community or this health and wellness culture has really gotten crazy with the uber or hyper restriction of food. I don't really believe in restricting foods just to restrict them. And if we actually look at what our biology likes and then look at traditional foods, those habits and traditions that have been passed down for generations are really being lost in today's day and age in this hyper restriction culture. And I really want to bring those traditional foods back, and I really want to educate about the biology because I think it's so important to look at food as information and simply that, and stop saying is XYZ good for me or is XYZ good for me. It's not about that at all. It's what is it telling your body to do? How is your body taking it, absorbing it, digesting it, assimilating it, and utilizing it? That's really what we need to make our nutrition decisions based on. So the first tip that I have for really any woman with hormonal imbalances, but specifically with PCOS, is switch out those fats. Be hyper aware of the types of fats you're consuming. It is not just about the amount of fats, it's the type of fats. And high quality fats can make all the difference when it comes to our hormones and also our metabolism, because fats tell our metabolism a lot of things, and we'll go into that in a second. But remember that fats are the building blocks of hormones. Our body actually makes hormones from cholesterol, which is often derived from fats. And so we need to remember that the types of fats we're consuming matter. And then fats can provide things like fat soluble vitamins and other really nourishing or nutrient dense factors that can affect our health as a whole. And when we're eating poor quality fats, polyunsaturated fats that come from canola oil and soybean oil and safflower oil and sunflower oil, it's telling our cells something very different than if we're eating these high quality saturated fats that come from, grass-fed beef tallow and grass-fed butter and ghee and coconut oil. Those are telling our body two very separate things. One is telling our body to store fat because it's a winter fat, and one is actually telling our body it can burn fat because it's a summer fat, and we'll go into that in just a second. But we can just take a little bit of a lesson from nature. So bears, when they are about to go into hibernation, they start pounding salmon, which are very rich in polyunsaturated fats. And the reason why salmon are really rich in polyunsaturated fats is because they swim in cold, deep waters. And so if they had saturated fats in their tissues, they would turn into a block of lard, right? If their tissues were made of something like butter, it would just turn into a block of lard, right? And they can't do that. They need to be able to swim through these dark, cold waters. But our bodies are 98.6 degrees. So when we put these cold water fats or these winter fats into a hot body, it starts to cool that body down. And that's the whole point of bears stocking up on nuts and seeds and, fatty fish before they hibernate. It's to slow everything down. Squirrels do the same thing. They start to stock up on nuts and seeds, and it starts to cool their body down. And when we have metabolic issues, when our body is already cooled the heck down, when our body's already slow, when our temps and pulses are slow. We don't want to be consuming anything that cools our body down, right? We want to be consuming things that are speeding our metabolism up and warming our bodies up. And so these are those high quality saturated fats that provide lots of nutrients, but also tell our body that it's safe to burn the fuel that it's intaking in other ways, like carbohydrates and proteins as well. And this is why I'm really not a big fan of cutting out dairy for PCOS unless you absolutely have to. For all these people that blanketly say that dairy causes inflammation, it's kind of like, what dairy are we talking about? Are we talking about uber processed dairy? Are we talking about like raw milk or grass-fed butter or things like that that provide these really valuable fat-soluble vitamins like vitamin A and vitamin K and even some vitamin D, which are so incredibly important for metabolism, but also for PCOS. And oftentimes women are really hurting for these, what I like to call fertility nutrients or fertility vitamins, these fat soluble vitamins. And the only place we can really source those from is from these animal fats. So if there's one thing that we can do, if we're gonna focus on one thing, start paying attention to the ingredients in your food and what types of fats we are making a habit of consuming. Number 2 is to eat for digestibility. So a lot of people right now are really obsessed with like plant-based eating. They'll tell you like eat your weight in plants or fill your plate with plants. But at the end of the day, like look at biology, plants don't want to be eaten. They have things like phytates and lectins and oxalates that are present to keep you from digesting them well. And they also want to steal nutrients from their environment so that they can grow and proliferate. This goes for like leaves, this goes for like cruciferous vegetables, they have goitrogens in them. And then this also goes for like nuts and seeds and things like that. They do not want to be eaten, and they are going to do whatever they can to stop you from eating them. In addition, they also contain anti-nutrients that draw minerals like calcium and magnesium and zinc to themselves, because seeds, for example, have to rapidly grow in the spring. So they'll fall off late autumn, they will go dormant during the winter, and then when they sprout in the spring, they need to rapidly grow. And so they're going to rapidly grow using nutrients that they pull from the soil. Well, if you're consuming them, they're going to pull those nutrients from you, and we don't necessarily want that when we're already in this undernourished state. We're struggling for nourishment. So we really want to look at food in terms of digestibility. How easy is it to digest, break it down, absorb and assimilate it, and use it as fuel for our bodies? And we also want to ask ourselves the question, is it truly nutrient dense? Meaning, does it provide us a lot of nutrients, a lot of energy, or is it just bulky? You know, a lot of people are talking about, like, for example, kale is nutrient dense, and I'm like, no, like, it's really not that calorically dense. It doesn't really have a lot of nutrients in relation to its size. You have to eat a lot of kale to get the nutrients that you want from it, and it's probably going to take more energy to digest it and absorb it than it is going to actually provide you in return. So really keep that in mind. Like, I'm going to gravitate towards like a piece of liver or a grass-fed steak or a piece of fruit, which is going to provide me tons and tons of nutrients and is actually pretty easy to digest. Tip number 3 is eat bioavailable protein. I can't tell you how many women are just under eating protein in general because they either don't like it or they don't digest it well, or they just don't really realize how important protein is for them. But not all protein is created equally. And when I say bioavailable protein, I mean protein that your body can digest and absorb. So in the last tip, I talked about how plants don't necessarily want to be eaten, and this goes for their proteins as well. They like to use their proteins to grow into a mature adult plant, and so they're not going to really share them with you all that easily. And so for people who equate plant protein with animal protein, they're sorely wrong, I guess. I should say, like, I'm sorry to disappoint you, but they're not the same thing. And we do derive amino acids or individual proteins from animal foods so much easier and so much better. So things like eggs and bone broth and high quality dairy, whether that's cheese or milk or yogurt, or things like cottage cheese, high quality meats like grass-fed beef, fish, shellfish. Those are great sources of protein that our body actually can easily digest, because not only are they providing us a wide variety of amino acids that are highly available, but they also stimulate our body to want to make more stomach acid, and stomach acid is needed to break down protein. So it's kind of like this wonderful circle where when we eat protein, we can digest protein better, and then, digesting protein better helps us get more protein. It all kind of goes together. So make sure you're eating that bioavailable protein to both balance your blood sugar. It's a very metabolically active macronutrient, but also to provide the building blocks for our structures, right? Our body builds all of its tissues out of amino acids. Number 4 is make sure you're eating plenty of metabolically supportive carbs. Yes, I said carbs. Carbs are so important for health as a whole, but a lot of people are either overeating carbs and undereating protein like I just talked about, or they're eating too many carbs in relationship to their protein, or they're running off of stress and then, they're going long periods without eating, and then all of a sudden they're eating a ton of carbs in one sitting. It's all about balance, and we want to eat a small amount of fat, carb, and protein with every meal. Carbs are blood sugar raising, whereas proteins are blood sugar lowering. And so we need to create balance constantly. We want consistent blood sugar throughout the day. And part of the way that we do this is by combining carbs and proteins together. And so carbohydrates are important for health. We just want to do them properly. Now, I'm all about metabolically supportive carbs that are easy to utilize and digest. So this usually falls under the spectrum of root vegetables and fruits and things like squashes. They provide a wide variety of minerals as well as those carbohydrates and some really healthy fibers. I'm also a very, very big fan of high quality dairy. If people can digest it and utilize it, it can be a great source of carbohydrates as well. And it's kind of this perfect food. If you're eating straight or drinking straight milk, it is a perfect balance of protein, carb, and fat. Some other, I guess we can call them sugar with nutrients or carbs with nutrients, are going to be things like coconut sugar and raw honey, which provide a lot of minerals and also can be a great source of carbohydrates as well. But at the end of the day, every single one of our cells runs on sugar, and so we want to make sure we're providing enough carbohydrates plus the nutrients to use those carbohydrates well. And then our last tip number 5, is pay attention to your food quality and flip that food over and make sure you're reading those ingredients. Ingredients 100% matter, and so many people are so concerned with what they shouldn't be eating or, the type of diet they're following. They're not even concerned with what they're putting in their bodies, and they don't even know what they're putting in their bodies. But additives, things like gums and carrageenan, those things will totally mess with your digestion, totally mess with your liver, which can impact your metabolism as a whole. The quality of your food, how was it grown? Was it sprayed with a bunch of pesticides? Are you eating a bunch of pesticides? That can affect your metabolism as well. It's affecting your gut health. And so when we are choosing our food, we want to either choose food ingredients, meaning that we're buying ingredients and making our food, or we want to make sure that we are being hyper aware of what's in our food, because oftentimes we're forgetting that most important part. We're so hyper concerned with all the other things that we're distracted, and we want to make sure we're really just eating real food. So in conclusion, I really hate the term eating for PCOS. I've heard so many people say that, and I hate that term. I'm actually personally eating for a healthy body. I'm eating to nourish my body. I'm eating to support my female biology. I'm literally eating for anything other than my PCOS, and I encourage you to do the same. Eat to nourish, eat to thrive, and don't get too caught up in all the fads and the diets and really all that BS that's going to actually hold you back from nourishing your body properly. Thanks so much for joining me on my YouTube channel, and I'll see you next time.